Universal needs Viagra for Stardust Racers because they can't get it up. Let's talk about it.
Now get ready. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ryan Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you doing today? Alright, today's video. A lot of you have emailed me recently, especially since Epic Universe has come out and said, hey, guess what? Stardust Racers is going to be down even longer now. A lot of you have emailed me and said, hey, I know you probably don't know what's going on, but what's your thoughts on this? So here's my thoughts on this. And yes, I don't really know what exactly is going on. There's some similarities I can draw between things with what I know, so let's take a look at what's happening here. First things first, what do we know? It went down for a refurbishment, Stardust Racers did, on February 19th. And then they came out and they said, okay, it's supposed to be open February 28th. We all looked at that and said, wow, okay. 9-day track refurbishment. Okay, that's doable. I mean, there's not much of track refurbishment. Let's go for it. Then they came out and they said, whoops, never mind. It's going to be extended to March 14th. So, okay, don't know what's happening there. My first thought was, well, they extended it. There's a chance that they just needed some sort of part, something for the train. Something failed NDT, and typically when things fail NDT, it's not just one, it's all of them. So if you have a pin that's cracked, you want to replace sometimes everything. Manufacturer might not just have like 20 of these pins sitting around, so they might have to make more, so time frames get pushed back, completely understandable. Then they came out and they said, well, now it's going to be March 14th. Okay, so it's like, well, what's going on here? Let's look at this. I've looked around, say, what's happening with Stardust Racers? I'm getting a lot of pictures on the internet, basically, with a lot of people working on the track. It's like, okay, what can we tell about the people that are working on the track? Well, these people that are on the track look like iron workers that are out on the track. Iron workers have kind of a distinctive look to them. They look like iron workers, not NDT workers. By that, I mean there's not really like... they don't really look like people that are out there examining the structure for cracks. They look like people that are out there doing a heavy-duty job in man baskets all over the track. So let's talk about real quick what it's not. It is not something to do with the death that was related on there. That happened, that was in the past, it's been cleared to operate. Everyone said yes, the thing's been back in operation since then. So it has nothing to do with that. I love you guys' rumors. It's amazing. Every time I dig through stuff and what people say, it's like, oh my gosh. It's not because the track is being replaced. That's not going to happen. It's not a thing. Track is not being replaced. So scratch that one off the list. Another one is it was down because it was 30 degrees and they ran the ride that day. Rides can run in pretty much sub-zero temperatures. It's not really a problem for them. It is a problem for the train because the wheel bearings and grease can't handle it and the train typically ends up valleying. But if they replaced the wheel bearing grease with like some zero weight motor oil, the thing would probably make it around the track just fine. It'd just be really oily when it was done. But no, rides are built and engineered to run at a very low temperature. So wind, temperature, things like that, not part of it. Don't worry about it. Out of the equation. It's down because the track is too rough. No, it's not down because the track is too rough. If there was a problem like bumps or bangs or something like that in the track, it would have come out during the factory acceptance testing, during accelerometer testing, when they measure all the forces in there. They would have looked at it and adjusted as necessary, i.e. when Intamin built Maverick for Cedar Point. They did that cool little heartline roll where it snapped around on itself and back over, and then they took that element out because they said during testing that was too much. Not what's going on here. Mac did not say, oh, now it's too bumpy, we need to do something. Not the case. Another one of my favorite ones is the manufacturer's on their way out. Okay, this is always one of my favorite ones because you can never tell where somebody actually is in this. All right, now the companies I worked with, both manufacturer and employed, were never quick to get the manufacturer out. In fact, most of the time getting the manufacturer out was like pulling teeth. It was really extremely hard to do. So I doubt whatever is going on, Mac is going to hop right on, Mach is going to hop right on a plane and fly out there to do what? Like, I really doubt it's happening because most of the time it's really not needed. Manufacturers say, what's going on? The park says, this is what's going on. Mac says, what's the extent of what's going on? The park says, here's the extent of it. Mac's internal engineers will make a decision about what the park needs to do to resolve the issue, and then the park will execute it and move forward. Honestly, no reason for the manufacturer to be on site for most of this stuff. I know that goes against everybody's, no, the manufacturer comes out. It's like, it's actually very rare that the manufacturer comes out to these rides. Very rare. All right, so what do we know? We know that out there right now, people are working on the track. They're out there with big man lifts, which is just a high reach lift that gets people up to the track where they need to go. They're out there with big man lifts. There's typically 1 or 2 people in these man lifts, and they seem to be focused on the jointed connections of the track. What are they doing up there? That's what's up for debate, because we're not really sure what they're doing up there. We know that this was not planned, because they keep extending the date. They keep extending it, saying, nope, it's going to be further, it's going to be further, it's going to be further. So we know it wasn't a planned thing that's happening. So the next one becomes, is this NDT work? It's kind of yes and no right there, because what I have a feeling is that original 9 Days Down, they did plan to do NDT work on the track and structure. Now, most NDT work that's done to these track and structures is visual, which means you pay somebody that's certified to go out there and look at the welds on the track. And if they find any indications, indication being the key term here, if they find any indications about something that's wrong, then the park will typically have to dig into whatever it is. i.e., if you go out there and look at the track and the structure and you say, hey, there's an indication on it. What's an indication look like? It looks like a crack. Now, it just looks like a crack. That's the reason why engineers say that's not a crack, it's an indication. Because until you take the paint all the way off of it, and until a certified person in non-destructive testing comes out there and says, yes, that is officially a crack, that is not a crack, that's an indication at that point. Because all the time what happens, the paint will actually start to chip and break away just due to lack of prep or something like that. And it will look like an indication, it will look like a crack, but it is in fact not a crack. So that is one of the things. So what I have a feeling of, and this is just a feeling, again, the park doesn't tell me anything, the park's not going to tell me anything, nobody's going to let this cat out of the bag, is I've got a feeling of it was something that turned up during the NDT inspection. Now, this could be something like indications found on joints, and then, or an actual crack found on one of the joints. Now, one of the hairy little slippery subjects that you get into with a lot of these things is that when you find a crack on a joint, the manufacturers typically say, that's great, let's find out what the extent of this is. So if it is a standard joint, like if it's a track-to-track segment or something like that, and you end up cracking it right there, guess what the manufacturer wants to know? They want to know how many of them are out there. So you have to go throughout the entire ride and get it. Now, this information is a lot to undertake on a roller coaster, but on Stardust Racers, it's actually 2 roller coasters right next to each other. So intertwined with each other. So that information is actually going to take a very long time to get. So you got to remember, everything they're doing on this ride, it's actually 2 rides. It's not just 1 ride. So everything is going to take twice as long as they want it to. Now, what else could have happened during this? It could have been that there was a bolt failure. Now, bolt failures spark conversations that lead down really bad paths really quick. So I've had bolt failures on newer equipment to where you put the bolt in, you tighten it, and everything looks fine and it's going great, and then either the bolt snaps or you come up on a check and you go to recheck the torque on that bolt and it's loose. So not sure why it's loose, you kind of like, you tighten it back to its torque spec and then it snaps the bolt. It's like, okay, that was odd. Get some more bolts and replace the bolt in there. Torque it back again, and then later on it come back and it's loose again, and you tighten it and it blows the bolt out again. Okay, so what happened in this particular scenario is that when we had put that whole thing together, we actually had received a batch of insufficient bolts. And we didn't know exactly where they were. We just know that during this batch of bolting, during this batch of bolts, it was basically there was a mess up, and we now have failures inside there. So what we had to do is preemptively go through the entire thing and replace all of those bolts because we didn't know exactly where they went. These things aren't like nuclear submarines where you actually have a serial number on every single bolt and there's a spec sheet behind it and they know exactly where that bolt went and where it came out of. It's not that technical. All you know is that if you have a particular batch of bolts and you have a bunch fail inside there, you just know that batch failed. Now, when you're putting a ride together or something like that, track and structure bolts, track to track bolts, track to column bolts, or whatever they might be, you don't know where those went. Now, replacing bolts in a structure isn't that easy to do. It's not just like take this one out, put the new one back in, and tighten it. Because before you pull the thing out, typically those bolts are under like a side load. They're twisted essentially inside there. So first you have to relax the column, you have to relax the track joint first, and then you could take one at a time out and put it back together. Never ever pull all the bolts out at the same time because it might spring apart on you in a very bad way. So you have to relax the joint first. It might even be a couple of joints in each direction before you can start taking those bolts out one at a time and replacing them. So there could be something like that going on there. I heard someone say on one of the comments, I looked on there and they said, oh yeah, they're having to replace every single bolt on there. Okay. I mean, it's possible. I mean, it worked for Steel Curtain. They worked great there. They replaced all the bolts with some bigger ones on that one. Great. And that seemed to work for them. Now, this could be something like Mac just got a bad batch of bolts. They don't know where exactly they went in the ride, but they went into the ride. So they're going throughout that entire ride and they're trying to find that, M30 by 275 or 280 or whatever it is bolt that's in the ride. And anytime they come across one of those in this, that matches this criteria, they have to take it out and replace it. That could be going on. Also, what could be going on was that they were improperly torqued. Something like that. You never know. Like they said, oh, they over torqued them when they installed them. They used a lubricated thread when it was actually a dry thread value. Like all those things line up and it's like, okay, any of this could be correct. Now, the pictures I did see, I see people that look like they would be replacing nuts and bolts out there on those man lifts working on the track. I don't see people that look like they're out there doing non-destructive testing. It doesn't really look like that to me. There's been some comments that there was some painting and some stuff going on. It's like, okay, that could be areas where they might have found an indication. They took some paint, they say, oh, we might have an indication here. You go up there, you have to take the paint off, you have to NDT the area, verify whether it is or is not a crack, and then put the paint back on. So that's more than likely going on as well during the exact same time. So the bottom line is, at the end of the day, know that we still don't know exactly what's going on. They're not going to tell us what's going on either. It's none of our business. But people said, hey, what are your thoughts on it? My thoughts is when I look at it and look at all the pictures and information that there is available out there, because I'm not standing there watching them in person, because a little 5-minute video watching somebody will work will nail down exactly what's going on with that thing. But since I'm not there and I can't do it in person, this is what I have to go off of, and to me it looks more of like a mechanical issue, whether it's torque backing off or bolts that have stretched, or maybe they're having to replace faulty bolts, because I've had to do that in the past on other things. And I really don't think Mac's going to come out for this. I really don't think that's a thing. They're going to get the extent, they're going to send them a bunch of parts. If it's bolts, they're going to say, hey, install this. If it's indications, like if it's getting cracks all over the place, then they will send weld repair procedures and say, hey, this is how you weld it back together. Now, welding is not going to happen during the daytime with everybody around. It's not like they don't want people seeing it or anything. It's just that there is a lot of things happening around that area. They want a much more controlled environment, so they're going to do it at nighttime when there's nobody around. That way they don't have to worry about where stuff goes, things flying, banging on a ride, something like that. That type of stuff is partially for convenience, and it's partially because it just doesn't look good to the general public, And for a lot of people say like, oh, they're going to go up there, they're x-raying the track. It's like, okay, x-ray or radiographical testing, and when it comes to those joints, You typically don't do that with the park open. If they're doing that, it's later on at nighttime when the park is closed because you have radiation in the area. Granted, there are a lot of services now where the radiation is much lower, but you still don't want that being broadcasted everywhere. But one of the things about radiographical testing, it is almost the most expensive testing you can possibly do. And most of the time, that's overkill. Manufacturers, like, it's not necessary. I've had pretty big failures on stuff where we said, hey, we should use RT or radiographical testing. We should use RT on this and find out what happened down at the root level. And the manufacturer was like, don't bother. We'll just make you a new one. You know? And we didn't have to RT that piece. No, we did it anyway. That was scary. All right, so now, what do you think? Because I think this is I honestly think this is a mechanical issue like nuts and bolts and things like that. Whether it be bad or things were not installed properly, which it happens from time to time. You can't fault anybody particularly about that a lot of times, especially if the torque wrench and stuff used, if they're using a hydraulic torque wrench, if the calibration was off. It's like, then it could be just a little tiny bit on a hydraulic torque wrench could be way off, and you've just taken every bolt and instead of properly torquing it, you've now turned it into a little piece of, a little spring and just elongated it way past where it was supposed to be. Let me know what you think though. Like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff. Do appreciate it. It helps me out. I'm Ryan the Ride Mechanic. Stay off the air gates.